Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming. My name is Hollow and this is Project M. This gory action combat game is currently known as Project M and was revealed recently at the Unreal Summit. Josh spotted this one and showed me, and it was easy to see why he was excited. The moment with the big monster where the fighting takes place in two phases, where it's upright and towering over you, but then more importantly, as you target the limb and literally cut it off, suddenly it begins crawling around and the fight is completely changed, becoming potentially a bit harder to deal with. This aspect should remind you of Tukiden, if you've actually played that, a beloved and well-known Monster Hunter-like game, of which there are only a few direct actual Monster Hunter-likes. In Tukiden, you could literally target limbs and cut them off, but in that concept, the fight would still remain mostly the same, with a weak point you could continue to attack where you'd actually cut that limb off. Here we see a similar idea, but we can actually remove that limb, and it actually affects the monster and how it works. It's a great concept, but to see it finally working in this way, I think it's really exciting. The trailer itself was a short, less than 2-minute thing that showed us a few important concepts. We have a large area with some sort of structure that's at the top, which you seem to be pushing through and towards against great challenges. We're playing as this very cool looking armored knight who's light and agile to match their thin frame, dealing with big horror style monsters, as shown as when the big boy opens its like maw mouth in a gross way. The combat has some pretty intense gore alongside the actually AI versus AI combat, where the big monster is just cleaving through its armored allies, I thought, as if they mean nothing to it. Before we get into the main combat with the big boy though, we get some nice moments of smaller scale combat. We're having sort of pack fights against these enemies. I can spot on the player's back 3 short swords or maybe big daggers that maybe you can use, but throughout the gameplay we see most use of this big greatsword used as a two-handed weapon. The speed and precision at which that sword is used is really cool. It is hard to give something like this both speed and then also like a weight feeling on the actual impact, and that's what I think I see here. This really strong horizontal stroke separates torso from legs, kind of reminding me a bit of Metal Gear Rising Revengeance, where you're targeting bodies and you can cut away different parts of an enemy. It's not just that though, there's also these vertical raises that also send the enemies flying in different parts, but we do see them actually defending themselves using a sort of upwards guard. UI wise, that's completely hidden in this trailer. Maybe they've not worked out what they're going to do with it, but we do see a tinge of red around the edge of the screens whenever you're taking damage. But now the real deal against the big boy. Turns out as a player we can of course guard as well, blocking and reducing damage. There's also a combat roll for possible iframes in a Souls-like way, and then this crazy high and sudden leap into a plunge attack right into the poor guy's groin. Not cool, you don't target that area. As the fight progresses though, we see some staggers happening as you begin to literally strip away the armor around a leg. You see parts of the equipment it's wearing falling off, eventually entirely removing that leg and bringing him down. This part's the most interesting for me though. As the monster is brought down, the fight is far from over. Now on all fours, or all threes I guess, it starts to charge around a bit more wildly with a bigger, wider hitbox, dashing forward and trying to chomp you with that more of it. It swings the axe a bit more like a club in bigger combos with horizontal reach, so maybe jumping over that would be better than trying to roll through it. Eventually though, the player does win by targeting that head and following with yet another bit of body part removal. The trailer does end with the player taking off their helmet, and I think it's a lady revealed underneath. During this shot, we see those smaller swords or daggers hanging on the back. It certainly looks like you can swap between them. You know, you can see the greatsword on one side, these triple swords on the other, but how would you use 3 swords at once in this playstyle? Like Zorro with one in the mouth? Anyway, that's the concept for the combat. What do you think? For me, it really reminds me of the dark fantasy nature of Mortal Shell, which I thought was a brilliant Souls-like that was very underrated, but certainly a lot more speedy, a lot more agile compared to the heaviness of Mortal Shell. Still, the weight of the combat does look satisfying to me, and as its combats go, it definitely feels different enough because of its very fast pace. Still feeling Souls-like though. Most important, the body breaking aspect or limb removal does seem to be a core aspect of the combat, where you're targeting places of an enemy to create a vulnerability, and that can actually change how the fight works. Like I said, that reminds me of Tukiden, but with a more up-to-date version with this new technology that we have now, that it can work as it was originally envisioned. I will say though, the gore definitely feels a bit over the top to me in this trailer. The way the enemies are just like exploding with it, it stands out a bit too much to me. Either way, I think the gameplay shown was enough to get me interested and to follow the game in the future to see how it goes. But what is this game? What do we actually know about it? Let's take a look. Project M comes from Hound 13, which is a South Korean studio. This game is considered a dark fantasy action RPG with a planned release in 2023, which is not so far away considering this is our first time seeing it. The gameplay we saw is actually a prototype or pre-alpha gameplay from a demo they've already built, which really reminds me of a game I talked about recently, Black Myth Wukong, who did the same thing, although there's a lot less to show here compared to that. What I find great about this concept though is how it's not some BS pre-rendered cinematic they're just showing. This is actual gameplay from a demo you could technically play. Maybe it'd be shallow and super short in its super early state, but it exists, and I think that's a really good sign. Alongside its planned 2023 release, it is coming to next-gen consoles and of course PC. Overall though, details of Project M are sparse while it is in its early state, but we can go to the Hound 13 website and learn a little bit more about who's actually behind this. The CEO has a message about the team and what they're trying to do, but unfortunately because it's in Korean, I'm using Google Translate, so I'm going to paraphrase what was said because the English came out pretty broken. Hound 13 are passionate about developing games by working with industry experts and experienced developers who have more than 10 years under their belt. Their goal is to simply make games that are valuable to players, and the CEO states that they're going to focus on making their games better as sort of the core philosophy behind their dev process. As always, these messages are nice to hear, they're always very positive, but we know things don't always go that way when it comes to, say, marketing aspects or release windows that are maybe too strict and optimistic. Still, it's good to hear that, and hopefully we do get to see them prove what they're saying. As we progress through the website though, we can see a section for the games they've released, which appears to be Just 100 Soul, an action RPG from mobile that looks to be rated well. It released back in 2017. Naturally, mobile games and full-fledged games for PC and console are totally different, but it's nice to see they at least have some kind of history in releasing games. And 100 Soul had like over 1 million downloads on just the Google Store and had rated well. Either way, they're actually currently recruiting game artists and game designers, which is a really important thing to see during the main development of the game. That gives me faith that, hey, we may actually see Project M get somewhere since they are recruiting. But will this game actually ever see the light of day? So many Project X or L or whatever project title that revealed and then you might not hear about them again. I actually think that concept is kind of BS. Even in the comments of this trailer, people were saying that, you know, oh, we're never going to see this again. I don't think that's fair. Lots of project games have just got titles and then being developed and even released. While I'm not saying all project games will 100% succeed, of course some have been abandoned, I don't think it's as common as people make out. So I do have hope for Project M thanks to those details mentioned, you know, the functional demo, the clear timeline for a release and the platforms, the studio having released games before. But nothing is more reassuring than the fact that it's been backed by Garena, who dropped a ridiculous $18 million investment into this studio. Garena is this big company. It was founded 12 years ago. It's a well-known publisher basically. They're most known for Free Fire, which had like 80 million daily users in May 2020. While we don't know if they're just backing the game or they're even helping to publish the game, it's good to see that that type of confidence and crazy financial support exists, you know, have given the devs of Hound 13 the ability to hopefully produce something they have faith in. Either way, that is everything I have for you in regards to Project M. I imagine we're not going to hear much from them for a little while, but I'm looking forward to seeing whatever it is this show is next. Let me know what you're thinking. Will this game see release? Is it something you're interested in? I think there's a lot of potential with those big enemies and the limb removal aspect of the gameplay, but let's see what they do with it. Until next time though, I've been Hollow, you've been you, thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.